What's up, guys? I'm Alex.
I'm Jason. We're the Table Monkeys, and today, we're going to talk about injuries and torn biceps.
Torn biceps specifically. It happens too often in arm wrestling, and there are ways to prevent it.
Yeah.
And we want to help you
we want to
not get torn.
Yeah, try to have a few less of them happen because we were just at Provincials, which was amazing. We've obviously posted videos about it over the last few weeks. It was about a month ago now, right?
A month ago?
I know, yeah, right? Yeah. And anyway, there were 2 bicep tears at Provincials. We'll throw up some clips courtesy of Patrina Brooks. So we're going to have her link down in the description. Check her out because she has basically all the best Ontario tournaments because she's the one that's allowed to film from the best angles for all of Joe Gould's tournaments, which are all the best tournaments.
Yes.
So, check her out. And these clips are from her. We're going to show you the 2 bicep tears right now and then talk about how they happen and how you can avoid them.
Yep.
Ready, go!
Sean McDonald, Dave Zimmerman.
All right, so how did those bicep tears happen? Okay, well, first thing, you're gonna notice that they are fully supinated. So, which means that the tension is on their bicep. If you are pronated, then you're using your brachialis to close your arm, flex your elbow.
You got a lot of access to your shoulder as well from there, where, again, if you're supinated, if you use your shoulder, it's got to go through your bicep.
Yeah, because the bicep connects into your shoulder and into your elbow.
Yeah.
So not only are they supinated, they're turned over. Some guy is pressing down on their bicep, but they're also leaning away. So they're falling away from their arm, which is opening up their bicep even more.
Yeah, this is the main one that you see. I remember one of the early tournaments I went to, somebody that I pulled with early on, he suffered a bicep tear doing the exact same thing. He got taken out here like this, and then when this guy came up to like adjust, he tried to lean back hard into it, and right as he leaned back, the guy pushed down hard, and because he was already in such an extended position, by leaning back, and being already supinated, you just put so much tension on that tendon and you extend it to its full length. So it's just such a compromised position, and it's how you see it happen in the gym too. When you see people doing it on a curling bench, it's when their elbows are inside real tight, they're supinated super hard, and as soon as they get fully elongated and try to force back up on the bicep from there, the bicep tendon just gives out.
Yep, and you also see it when people do deadlifts. If they're doing over-under grip, a lot of the times these big powerlifters have very tight biceps, and they end up pulling with a slight bend in their elbow. So already their biceps under tension, and if you think they're pulling something like 800 pounds, that's a whole lot of tension on that bicep, and you see a lot of bicep
and
tears
they're
happening.
They're in such a fight or flight, like do or die moment, that it's very likely for them to, again, just add a little bit of tension this way while they're in the position Alex just talked about, against way more weight than this is ever going to move, and something has to give, and it's going to be their bicep tendon. And the other, so basically 2 ways for it to happen: being fully supinated and trying to pull tension through your bicep from an overextended position, and then the second way it can happen is just from being too tight or having built up calcification on your connective tissue, which can come from too much of them pancakes and PEDs.
Yeah, so in theory you could be in a relatively tight closed position with your elbow and still tear your bicep.
Bang, like it could tear right in there, as opposed to not being fully opened up, because you're just either the muscles are too tight. So there's kind of, if you think about it like a rubber band, there's kind of 2 concepts. One, the muscle's too tight, so it's like cement has formed around a certain part of the band, and as you stretch the band, the shorter end, wherever that tightness is, that shorter end of the band snaps because it's just being pushed under too much tension because there's a whole bunch of band that isn't stretching. Or it becomes brittle, kind of like chalk. So when you push, once you put enough tension on the band, that chalky, like brittle part just snaps.
Yeah.
Right. So those 2 things are relatively preventable. The first would be don't abuse PEDs too much, and be careful with the ones you do, so that you're not using ones that'll dry you out or make you brittle. And then the other one would be just keep on top of mobility.
Yeah, so
and
that's stretching, that's massage gunning, foam rolling the area, or massage balling the area so you're not too tight. And then more prevention techniques would be actually training the antagonist muscles.
Yeah.
So that's elbow extension, so that's tricep extensions of all different angles.
Yeah. And that's probably another reason why you'll see guys in arm wrestling tear their biceps frequently, is because they do so much of this. They end up overworking this side and not working this side. And then again, it's just an imbalance, and in the wrong position, that imbalance can just cause, you know, like a cascade of things to go wrong, which usually the main thing that goes wrong is your bicep tears. So the main ways to prevent it, if it's not the like tightness and bullshit way, is once you get supinated, if you're in a hook, okay, you don't create up pressure by leaning back. That's not how you create up pressure in a hook, because that does exactly what we just said, which is put all the pressure solely on your bicep. What you do to create up pressure is you push forward, right? You push up and forward to try to create height. Then you drag down, then you push up and forward again. If I'm in a top roll and I gain position, so I have his riser, now, because I've got a good angle on my elbow and I've got hand control, I can apply lean and body lean to create up pressure that way. That's how you create up pressure. And where I think this confusion happens with newer pullers is they like to pull in a hook and they see guys do this, and then all of a sudden they get in this position out here and they go like this to try to create this pressure here. And if this guy has good elbow pressure, and he doesn't even have to be that strong in this position, but if he's stronger than you are, and like if it isn't just that you got caught off guard, and like Anthony, you might see Anthony, that video we just put out where he gets caught over here, it's because he's not actually pulling until here, you know, and then he engages to like kind of put himself in a bad position and he pulls through it because his bicep's so stupid strong. It's one of those anomaly situations. It's not necessarily a great, and he doesn't do this. He drags into you hard like that. Like he'll get opened up like this and then still be able to drag you in. And that's, if you're getting opened up and you're in a hook, if you can't drag the guy in like Anthony does, your only other option is to try to roll out. So that's not holding supination anymore, which is what both those guys were doing too, is they were still holding their supination hard as they were getting here, and then they're like this. If I'm getting taken this way and I can roll, then I can lean to like get out of it. But I've given up supination. I'm not holding with my bicep anymore. I've transferred the pressure outside, and that might not work. It could look like my match with Ian, and you just get fucking flattened because I can't actually get out. But if I had have gone like this with Ian, guess what? Bicep tear number 2 would have sucked, right?
Yeah.
So the leaning back is once you've won position in a top roll. It's not a defensive thing.
Got pronation.
The only time it's a defensive thing is if you're trying to bail and roll out, and in that position, if you don't get out, it's only going to be a little bit safer to be flattened.
Which is still risky, by the way, because if you have zero pronation and you try to drag and roll out,
and if you're against someone who's strong enough to keep your pronation mitigated, like with Ian, I was strong enough to get out enough where I didn't get, like I said earlier, I didn't get hung up, completely flattened and then leaning out. Like I could feel my hand winning a bit enough to, okay, now I can try to save it, and no, he's just got enough of my arm that I can't get there. But the point is, you don't lean back unless you're going for a top roll, and usually once you've won the top roll, like hand position wise, right?
Okay, so obviously you can do all the prevention techniques we just mentioned. You can not abuse PEDs, you can stay on top of your mobility, you can work your antagonist muscles, but freak accidents still do occur, and you may incur a bicep tear.
Or you may be around one. Maybe you didn't suffer one, but you're around one. So like, what do you do if someone does tear their bicep? Hopefully not you, but if it is you, it's the same regardless, right? So the term that I always learned, we're going to talk, is RICE, right?
RICE. So RICE stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Now this is not going to fix your bicep, but this is something you do right after, before you can rush your ass to the hospital.
So the most immediate thing that you're like actively going to do is get to the hospital. Whilst figuring out how and when and how quickly or how you're going to get to the hospital, in that time, get some ice on it, wrap it up tight, and try to hold it up. And of course, don't use it. That's the first thing, right? So snap, you feel a tear, you feel something, you look, it's not feeling good. Even if you're not sure if it's fully disconnected yet, don't go like, here, let's pull and let's see if it's still, no. It's done use at that moment until after surgery and while after surgery. And from that moment, you're going to try to find ice, you're going to wrap it, and you're going to elevate it. So
just on that point, so because it might not roll up like you see a lot of times.
This is very important.
Where the bicep tendon is completely ruptured, the bicep muscle actually rolls up. It could be partially torn, where it would still look kind of normal, but you felt something tear, something rip, and you're like, I don't know, maybe it's still good. No, stop.
Yeah.
If you feel something in your bicep tendon in this region, even if you feel anything painful,
anything around here that feels or sounds like rope or anything ripping, like clothing, like if you've ever like ripped your shirt or whatever, that's what it sounds like inside, like when it happens. Anything you hear like that, that's a good sign. You don't use that arm for the rest of the day. Ice it, elevate it. If it's bruised to shit and feels really sore the next day, maybe you wait that long to get to the hospital. That's okay. It's not great, obviously, if it was actually a bad injury. The sooner you get to the hospital, the better. But like Alex said, you don't continue to use it if you feel or if anything's questionable in there. If you're pulling and you get one of those little like elbow pops that kind of happens, that's like a bit of a crack, that is something you can judge, like, okay, let's see what's going on there. But when you hear tearing, the sound of, like I said, fabric tearing, something bad happened. So just don't use it.
Right. So get your ass to the hospital, book a surgery.
And sorry, I thought he was going to touch on this, but just to go back to the bicep coiling up, is the other reason why you don't want to use it at all, like you're icing it, you're compressing it, you're elevating it, or putting it in a sling, is because any like the muscle will still activate, and if it isn't connected, it's going to continue to coil up further and further, and the further it coils up, the harder it is for them to reattach it, or the more they have to cut your arm up in order to get to it. So that's the other reason why you don't want to move it, is A, you could just end up actually tearing it if you didn't fully tear it, or you could make it a lot harder for the surgeons and make your whole experience worse. So main first thing, rest it, don't use it anymore, then ice it, compress it, elevate it while you are on your way to the hospital.
Yeah, book your surgery, be nice to your doctor, make sure they've done it before, and then ask them to
attach that motherfucker as low as possible.
Yes.
Because it definitely does help. But and then take your time recovering and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
do everything they tell you to do.
Yeah. But yeah, again, that supinated and trying to pull through your bicep. Once you're fully, like even when you're in a hook and you're over here supinated like this, you're not actually like pulling through your bicep much. You're usually using like your lat and all this connection this way. And when you get over here and you keep pulling that same like direction, like with your bicep and trying to pull into it or lean up, it's just, you're isolating so much pressure, right? On that one
on a
spot.
small muscle.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot of people do that too when they pull. They look for pressure, like when it feels hard, they feel like they're giving a lot of strength or they're really strong, and usually it just means that they're working more than they have to, you know?
Yeah.
So pull smarter, not harder. Learn how to hook, learn how to top roll. The better you get at your techniques, the safer you're going to be able to keep yourself on the table.
Work your antagonist muscles.
Yeah.
Stay on top of your mobility. And you should be good.
Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff.
And monkeys out.
Peace.